The One by Eve Elliott. First published in the crime fiction anthology Cemetery Plots of Northern California. Produced by the Sacramento chapter of Sisters in Crime. Amanda Stack stepped from the cab outside Sacramento's Calvary Catholic Cemetery and pushed her oversized Chanel sunglasses farther up her nose. The sun melted into the horizon after another sweltering day, streaks of salmon and coral bleeding into the darkening sky. The driver retrieved her rolling carry-on case from the trunk, and she held out a $100 bill, folded between two manicured fingertips. He took it and scowled. The meter read $99.85, which she thought was already highway robbery. She was damned if she was going to cough up a tip, too. The driver muttered under his breath as he dug in his pockets and fished out a nickel and a dime for the change, slapping each into her palm with grubby fingers. She smirked and thanked him, sweet as cherry pie. It stung, of course, to hand over that $100, but not as much as it usually would have. Tonight was different. Tonight, she had 600 more of them, crisp and sharp and smelling like heaven, nestled safely in the lining of her Gucci bag. She telescoped up the handle of her case and began to walk through the cemetery, glancing around to see if she had company. She liked this graveyard. It was peaceful and quiet, and not so large that it took her forever to do what she needed to do. Her high heels clicked on the paved walkway, and the wheels of her case rumbled behind as she turned to her right and strode briskly up the familiar pathway toward the section she knew so well. Maybe she shouldn't have taken the time to come here, she thought. Maybe her first impulse, to head right to the airport, had been the right one. But when the driver had turned down Verner and the broad brick entrance had come into view, she tapped on the grimy partition and told him to stop. "You'll be glad you did this," she assured herself. "It's just an extra 10 minutes, then you can grab another cab and head for the airport." As she walked, she glanced down at the smooth, flat gravestones embedded in the earth, her eyes flicking past the names of grandparents sharing eternity together, husbands and fathers gone too soon, wives and mothers remembered with fresh flowers even decades later. "Beloved husband of Catherine," one read. Another remembered Louisa, loving mother of Jeremy and John. She slowed her pace as she approached Amelia's plot, the one she'd found herself tending to sporadically over the last year. Not often, she had to admit, but enough to make sure the crispy brown bouquets were cleared away at least once in a while, and the raised letters on the memorial stone were brushed free of dirt and debris. She stopped in front of it now and let herself remember. A year ago, almost to the day, she'd been standing in front of this plot, her attention snagged by something, she couldn't remember what, when she'd noticed Ted for the first time. Well, more like noticed him noticing her, a skill she had carefully cultivated ever since she'd graduated out of training bras. It was always good to notice when a man was noticing you. And with this man in particular, Ted Marion, nothing to look at, a little stoop-shouldered from age, his remaining hair more of a suggestion than anything, but sporting a genuine Rolex Submariner and a kind smile. It had been very good that she'd noticed him noticing. A widower, he'd said. 10 years his wife Doris had been gone, God rest her soul. No children, just his wife's great niece somewhere and an elderly mother in Alturas. And after a moment of uncomfortable silence, he'd asked her in that mild, gentle way of his, which loved one she was visiting. She'd looked down fondly at this very grave and told him, "In memory of a dear sister, mother, and wife, Amelia Louise Powers, January 30th, 1981 to August 11th, 2017. Never forgotten, always missed." He'd been easy to talk to, which wasn't always the case with these older guys. And he hadn't been hitting on her, that was the other thing. This was a cemetery, for God's sake. Who in their right mind would hit on someone in a graveyard? No, he'd simply noticed her looking so sad, he'd told her later, and thought she could have used someone to talk to. At first, she flat out hadn't believed him. She'd grown up grindingly poor, with a single mother and a series of uncles and friends, and even a new dad once, who had stayed longer than the rest, but cleared out all the same without a look back. She'd learned early and well that men could be charming, could be flattering, could even pretend to care, but at the end of the day, they only wanted one thing from a pretty young thing with a cute smile and an even cuter body. She'd learned not to trust their come-ons, their flirtations, their fake interest in anything other than the cleavage that kept drawing their eyes. But Ted had been different. She looked for his angle, but never found one. She waited for him to make a pass, but he never did. When he took her to dinner, he dropped her home afterward without even so much as a wistful glance up at her apartment window or a sloppy goodnight kiss. He was a gentleman, an honest-to-God gentleman, and when he told her he loved her, well, she knew she'd found the man she'd been waiting for. She had found the one. It hadn't taken long from there. Within a month, she'd moved in, and within 3, he'd proposed, pushing a large, clunky diamond ring up over her knuckle, trembling hands and tears in his eyes. He'd never thought he'd be lucky enough to find love twice, he'd said, and she'd been genuinely touched by it all, in spite of herself. Despite everything, despite the age difference, despite how mild-mannered he was, how soft and wistful he looked when he reached for her at night, she knew they could make each other happy. It was not hard to think of that first day, standing here as she was, looking down at the polished marble stone and the fanciful script carved into it. But she had a plan, and not much time left to see it through. Amelia had been good to her, no doubt, but she didn't have time for this. She needed to get going. "Amanda?" She whirled around, a startled cry escaping her lips. "Teddy! Jesus, you—" "Oh my God, Amanda!" Ted sobbed, his whole body crumpling with relief as he came towards her. He was wearing the same windbreaker he'd been wearing the day they'd first met, those same chinos. It was like she was right back there, like the last year with him hadn't happened. Except now he collided with her, wrapping her in his arms and sobbing into her hair, holding her so tight she could hardly breathe. He hadn't done that the first time they'd met. Teddy, honey, you're hurting me," she gasped, and he finally released her, stepping back. His eyes were wet and rimmed red, his nose running a little. I'm sorry, he blubbered, his voice thick with snotty tears. "I'm just so relieved to see you." "What are you doing here?" She tried not to sound too irritated, going instead for a rattled surprise. "You're supposed to be in Alturas, helping your mother move into the nursing home?" He started nodding before she'd even finished speaking. Yes, right. But when I got there, the administrator called to say there was a delay, something to do with the first payment not going through, so we couldn't move her in this weekend after all." "Oh, that's such a shame," she said. "You should have called me. Maybe I could have helped straighten it out." "I tried calling you, but the number's been disconnected," he said, looking at her with imploring eyes, mutely begging for an explanation. "I called over and over, got the same message every time. I got so worried I came home this afternoon, but you weren't there. Your clothes were gone. Everything. Oh, sweetheart." He dissolved into tears again, burying his face in his hands. When he spoke, his voice was thin and high. "I've been here for an hour, just hoping you might show up here. Thank God you did. I've been so worried." "Honey, I'm so sorry," she soothed. She glanced over at the bench they'd shared last year and gently guided him towards it, pulling her case along with her. "Come sit down with me." He sat down heavily and wiped at his eyes with the tissue she offered from her purse. "I got so scared when I couldn't reach you and all your things were gone. What's going on, Amanda?" She hesitated and reached up to stroke his hair. "You're exaggerating, Teddy, honey. I didn't take all my things with me. Come on now, don't you think you're overreacting just a little?" He shrugged helplessly and opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. "I can explain everything, but I need you to take a deep breath for me. Can you do that?" He nodded and closed his eyes as he inhaled deeply. A couple of errant tears squeezed from beneath his lids and rolled down his face. She wiped them away with gentle fingers. He noticed my clothes were gone, she thought, watching his face as he began to calm down. But the question is, has he noticed the money is gone? She tried to think quickly, another necessary skill she'd developed in middle school. What should I tell him? If he knew the money was gone, she'd have to come up with something spectacular. If he didn't know it was gone, well, she could still salvage this then, couldn't she? There, now, that's better, she soothed, her voice low and gentle. Tell me what's happening, Amanda, he said, sounding like he was on the very edge of bursting into full-on tears. Tell me the truth. Are you leaving me? Is that what this is about? Oh, honey, she said, you don't seriously think... Oh, Teddy, the ideas you get sometimes. But you've packed your bags and you're here, he said, looking up and around, as if only realizing where they were. His gaze landed on Amelia's grave. I thought if you really were leaving me, you might stop by to say goodbye to your sister. And it looks like I was right. His lip began to quiver, and she hurried to stave off another crying jag. Sweetie, listen to me. You're working yourself up over nothing, I promise you. She hesitated, looking at him for some sort of guidance as to whether she should say more. His soft, pained gaze helped her decide. She let out a heavy sigh. Okay, look. I really didn't want to tell you this, but I hate to see you so upset. So here goes. I've been planning something for you. A very, very big surprise. He stared at her, his mild eyes watery with tears and confusion. A surprise? A surprise, she echoed, nodding. I thought you'd be away all weekend, so I thought I could pull it off, but I guess not. She smiled indulgently at him, like he was a naughty child who had misbehaved but was too cute to scold. You're just too hard to sneak on, Mr. Marion. What surprise? He asked. He didn't sound excited. He sounded like he could have finished that sentence with, requires you to cancel your phone and pack all your things. Well, I guess I have to tell you now, she said, a teasing note to her voice, unless you trust me enough to let me keep it a surprise until I get back. His lip quivered a bit, and she could see he wanted both. He wanted to show her he trusted her, but he wanted to know what was going on more. And honestly, she couldn't blame him. All right, she said, stroking the soft white hair at his temple. Remember when we went to Baja and we met up with Jim and Lucy, the couple who ran that fishing charter business? His eyes drifted to the right, searching for the memory. His gaze returned to her, eyes wider now. And you said... She nodded as well, prompting the memory, easing him into remembering it the way she hoped he would. Your lifelong dream had been to retire to Mexico and start a fishing charter business yourself. His eyes flickered and brightened just a little bit. Well, she drew out the word coquettishly. You know my friend Helen? I found out her boss is selling his fishing boat. It's moored down in Cabo, as it happens, and, well, she scoffed theatrically, like what she was about to say was obvious. I didn't want to buy it for you sight unseen. He stared at her. So that's why I was going away, she said, gesturing to her case. I thought I could pop down there while you were with your mom and get it all taken care of before you came back. I honestly thought I'd be back by tomorrow and could surprise you with the good news when you got back. Speechless, dumbstruck. Only his eyes moved, roaming over her face. And as for the phone, I dropped it yesterday, damn thing. You know how I'm always doing that, she said. They're just so slippery, and you know me. I'm so clumsy with them. Well, yesterday I was taking it out of my purse, and whoops. She made a flinging gesture with her hand and laughed. There it went, flying into the street. And before I could grab it, someone ran right over it. I just haven't had time to get a new one. I'm so sorry, honey. I should have known you'd be trying to reach me. I'm so sorry. His eyes were following her every gesture. They'd even followed the imaginary phone being launched into the air. You You were going to buy me a boat? He finally asked. She squeezed his arm. Yes, for your birthday, in fact. I'm just sorry this had to happen to ruin the surprise. So, his pale eyes appeared eager to find comfort in hers. Is that why you took the money? So he knows about the money. Damn. Oh well, the story was out now. There was no reason not to keep going. Are you mad? She bit her lip and felt her brow crease as she met his eyes without flinching. I don't blame you if you're mad, but honestly, honey, Helen said her boss had another buyer interested and was only going to hold on to it for me over the weekend. Damn, I had pictures the guy sent me, but they were all on my phone. Let me try to remember. It was, She searched her memory for the details the guy had mentioned, his way of sweetening the deal. It's a 33-foot skipjack with a double berth down below, too, and some fancy fish finder thing on board. It sounds really good, at least to me. She watched Teddy's eyes, which had grown rounder with every detail she mentioned. But double beds and fish finders alone weren't going to convince him. I just thought if we don't go for this now, we might lose the chance. And it's your dream, baby. I just didn't think we could pass this up. He had talked about it constantly in Mexico. At the time, she thought maybe he'd just been overexcited, feeling youthful and full of vigor, the way vacations always made him feel. Resort stays, in particular, always made him randy and bright-eyed. There was just something about hotel sex, he'd said. It made him feel like an illicit lover, 40 years younger and ready to romance his sexy young girlfriend, even if he did have to pop a colorful little pill to do it. He looked down now, his expression bewildered and searching, as if he could find answers at his feet. I guess I did the wrong thing, huh? She finally probed, tentatively. He looked up quickly and turned so he was facing her. No, sweetheart, it's just that, well, like I said, the nursing home tried to process the payment and it came back NSF. When I came back home and you weren't there, well, he faltered, looking a little guilty. I began to wonder, so I called the bank and they said you'd made a large withdrawal. That's when I began to think. Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie, she said, wrapping her arms around his neck and squeezing tight. Wow, I couldn't have messed this up worse if I'd tried. Look, I have all the cash right here, she said, opening her purse and slipping her hand beneath the lining. She opened the bag wider so he could peer in and see all the crisp new hundreds bound and stacked together in neat rows. We can just take it all back to the bank on Monday and forget this ever happened. His eyes moved from the money back up to her face, and then back down to the money again. She was about to take out some bills and offer them to him when he looked up at her, a weepy smile spreading across his face. She, too, smiled with relief. I'm sorry I doubted you, Angel, he said then, and reached to hug her again, burying his face in her neck and breathing out like a balloon deflating. I should have known it would be something like this. Yes, you should have, she needled him gently and made to stand up. So, what do you say we head for... Just one thing, sweetheart, he asked, grasping her wrist to stop her from standing. If you're supposed to be at the airport, what on earth are you doing here? She pursed her lips and sat back down, gazing out towards the setting sun as the last shimmering rays speared out across the sky. She took a deep breath and turned back to him with a smile. I was on my way to the airport, and I just had this sudden need to see Amelia again, she said. Tears welled in her own eyes, and she dabbed at them delicately so as not to ruin her makeup. I don't know what came over me, but I've been thinking about her so much lately. I felt this crazy need to come see her before I left. She and I used to talk so often. I just really miss her sometimes. It probably sounds nuts, I know, but it's the truth. He took her hand in his and entwined their fingers. I understand, honey. I was like that with Doris for many years after her death. Amanda nodded, warming to the subject. See, I knew you'd understand. Sometimes you just need to I don't know, share the same space with them for a while, as crazy as that sounds. And honestly, honey, I started thinking that if I were to buy this boat for you, well, that would mean we'd probably be moving down to Baja, where you wanted to start the fishing charters. I thought, she faltered, her voice catching on a jagged breath, as much as I want to do that with you, it would mean leaving Amelia behind. Does that sound stupid?
Not at all, honey, he said, kissing her softly on the cheek. I think you're the sweetest thing alive, you know that? She shied away from the praise, smiling at him with bashful delight.
Oh, stop, you big softy. You're the sweet one.
He glowed from her praise, and for the first time since she'd whirled around to see him there, she felt like everything might actually be all right.
In fact, baby, she said, tilting her head to the side in thought, I don't know, maybe you'll think it's crazy, but...
But what, sweetheart?
She scrunched up her nose, the way he'd said he found adorable. Is there any harm in the two of us going down there just to look at the boat? I've booked my ticket. You could just buy a ticket on the same flight. We could go down together and make a fun weekend out of it.
Ted paused, considering. I don't know.
Just to look, she said. There's no harm in that, is there? Helen's boss said he'd take me out for a spin, and if you were there too, maybe you could do some fishing, see if he knows anything about running a charter business. From my phone calls with him, he sounds like a very nice guy.
Ted began to shake his head, though without conviction.
Look, maybe this is the chance you've been waiting for all your life. Maybe you'll take one look at it and fall in love, and you'll be glad we went.
It's just that my mother is going to need a lot of expensive care in the next few...
Oh, of course. But don't you still have that other account? The one with the proceeds from your wife's estate?
He straightened up and grimaced. Oh, no, I couldn't use that money for Mom. It's not even really my money. I told you that. I promised Doris I'd invest it until her great niece grows up.
I know. And you've done a wonderful job growing those funds. You took it from, what, 500,000 or something to over $1 million?
From 450 to 1.2, he said, a tinge of pride in his voice.
Exactly. Look at how much you made that money grow for your great niece. I don't think Doris ever had any idea you'd be able to grow it that much so fast. You're a genius, Teddy.
Well, I don't know about that, he scoffed, coloring under her praise.
And that's just my point. She squeezed his arm again. I think you've earned the right to spend some of your own money on your own dream, don't you? You can always just borrow a bit from the other account to settle up with the nursing home and then pay it back later. The girl is only, 15? You've got at least 3 years to pay that account back.
She could see him thinking about it, working out how he could, in fact, very likely pay it back before he was supposed to turn it over to the girl. But she also saw doubt in his eyes, and the last thing she wanted to do was worry him. If I push him too hard...
It was just a thought, honey, she said offhandedly. Whatever happens, I think we should take this chance just to have a nice weekend together. She squeezed his hand. My flight's already paid for, and it would be a shame to waste it. And then, of course, there's the hotel.
Ted's eyes gleamed at the mention of the hotel. She'd figured the hotel would seal it, and she was right. What the heck, let's do it, he said. He kissed her again. What time's the flight? Do we have time for me to go home and pack a few things? She twisted her watch around on her wrist and frowned.
The plane leaves in 2 hours, but I did want to stay and visit with Amelia for a bit.
Tell you what, he said, rising to his feet. I'll dash home and grab some things. You stay here and visit with your sister. I'll swing back and pick you up. It's only about 30 minutes to the airport from here.
She frowned up at him. Are you sure? Maybe we should just head right to the airport. You can always get a toothbrush and whatnot at the hotel.
No, I want to make sure I have everything I need, he said, winking at her. His colorful little pills, she thought. Of course.
Do you want to take the money with you?
She offered, holding out her purse. This was the hard part,
but she did it offhandedly with casual ease. I do feel kind of weird carrying around this much money, but the guy said he'd give me $20,000 off for cash under the table. Another gleam in Ted's eyes, and then doubt again clouding his expression. I mean, we are just looking, she assured him, but if you really love it, it would be nice to be able to jump on such a great deal. Ted hesitated, then snapped his fingers. You're right. Let's take it with us just in case. You've got it all safe and sound in that purse, so just hang on to it. I'll be back before you know it, sweetheart. She stood and hugged him tightly, kissing him 3 times in a row on his grizzled cheek. This is going to be great, honey, she said. This is so much better than my plan. I love you, Amanda, he said earnestly, his eyes shining. I love you too, Teddy. She kissed him and patted his rump playfully. Now go so you can get back here quick and we can start our weekend. She watched as he hurried towards the parking lot and smiled and waved as he turned just at the point where his next steps would take him out of sight. He threw his hand up in the air in a jaunty wave and disappeared. She remained still for a moment, waiting to see if something might make him turn around and come back. But after a few minutes of silence, the twilight sky settling around her like fog, she turned and walked over to Amelia's grave. She looked down at it for a few moments, just a few, and then she turned and walked on. She moved quickly, almost dragging the case along behind her, feeling it bump and bang as if it were a little dog that couldn't keep up. Not much time, she thought, thanks to this little interruption. Still, if she were lucky, she'd be able to make it with time to spare. She rounded a corner and slowed down, taking off her sunglasses to peer closely at the row of tiny, neat gravestones lining both sides of the walkway. Balloons and spinners, stuffed animals and toy trucks, streamers and ribbons and fresh bouquets crowded every small grave. She walked slowly, reading each grave, passing by the ones that didn't interest her. Eventually, she stopped at one that did. Our beautiful angel, Phoebe Marie Livingston, daughter of Dave and Caroline, born May 18th, 1986, Mercy Hospital, Folsom, called home to Jesus, June 25th, 1987. Amanda quickly did the math. Only 14 months younger than herself. Perfect. She withdrew her new phone and snapped a picture of the tombstone, checking it to make sure the details could be clearly seen. She'd lucked out, finding one with so many details committed to stone like this. Yes, it had definitely been worth stopping here. There were so many rich American men in Cabo, after all. She needed to make sure she could get back across the border with one of them. Once she was done with the boat guy she'd met on that cheaters website, once she'd lined up someone who wasn't already married, she'd go to the consulate in Mexico and explain through tears that all her ID had been stolen, including her passport and birth certificate, and she needed new credentials to get back home. It had worked before in the Dominican Republic. It would work again. All she'd have to do once she got back across the border was slip back up here and tell her sad story to the county records office. A few tears, maybe a story about a cheating husband who dumped her in Mexico, and she'd walk out with a new birth certificate and a whole new life. Phoebe Marie Livingston. She tried out the name as she turned to go, thumbing through her taxi app to book a new pickup. Phoebe Marie Livingston. It wouldn't be that hard to get used to, she thought, passing by the grave of Amelia Powers, whoever she was. No harder to get used to than Amanda Stack had been. Or Maisie Bellamy before that. Or Josephine Paget, the name engraved on the passport she was about to use, the name that she'd used to book her private jet and would have to burn once she left the country. But she didn't mind losing Josephine, or Amanda for that matter, now that she had Phoebe. With Teddy's $60,000 tucked safely in her purse, and his $1.2 million in her chic little rolling suitcase, she could be a lot pickier this time. She could live well for years before starting her search for the one all over again.